A town never forgets when someone vanishes, but the family sometimes does. The rain came down in relentless sheets over Milltown, turning the cobblestone streets into slick mirrors of gray. Marlene Harper stood under the flickering street lamp, hands trembling as she held the letter that had arrived that morning. It was short, typed, unsigned, and utterly chilling. Your son saw too much. He won't return. Her mind raced. Michael, her eldest, had left home only 2 days ago to investigate the old steel factory at the edge of town. He had been obsessed with uncovering the truth behind the industrial accidents that had plagued Milltown for decades. Now, with the letter in her hand, she felt the cold bite of dread. She had raised her children on honesty and courage, yet somehow Michael had stepped into a world she didn't even know existed. A world of corruption, greed, and blood. Her husband, Thomas Harper, arrived, dripping wet from the storm. "Marlene," he said, voice low, "what is it?" She handed him the note. His face drained of color, jaw tightening. "He's been threatened," he whispered, his fingers trembling. Someone didn't want him asking questions. The silence between them grew heavy, broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. Marlene's heart pounded. "We have to find him," she said. "Before it's too late." The couple knew the risk. The steel magnates of Milltown had long been untouchable, their hands in every office, every police report, every newspaper column. Michael had stumbled into a secret, and secrets in Milltown were punished harshly. Marlene's gaze drifted to the window, where lightning illuminated the old factory's looming silhouette. A shadow moved along the top floor, too quick to be a trick of the storm. "Thomas," she whispered, "I think he's already inside." The decision was made. They would confront the factory tonight, face whatever shadows hid behind its rusted gates. And somewhere deep inside, Marlene feared that what they found might not be Michael, but something far worse. As they stepped toward the factory, a figure emerged from the shadows, silently blocking their path. Some doors, once opened, release more than just dust, they release danger. The rain pounded against the Harpers' coats as they approached the gates of the old steel factory. Rusted iron groaned under the wind, and the flickering floodlights revealed only broken windows and peeling paint. Yet Marlene could swear she saw movement inside, a shadow slipping between machinery and scaffolding. Thomas tightened his grip on her hand. "Stay close," he whispered. "We don't know who's inside, or what they want." They stepped cautiously through the cracked gate. Each footfall echoed across the cavernous yard, mingling with the distant drip of water from the sagging roof. The scent of oil and rust stung Marlene's nostrils. Somewhere inside, Michael had been walking these same floors, tracing the threads of a secret that someone had worked for decades to hide. Suddenly, a metallic clang rang out from above. Both flinched. From a catwalk high above, a man in dark clothing dropped silently to the floor with uncanny agility. "Who's there?" Thomas demanded, voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through his veins. The figure stepped closer. Only in the dim light did they recognize him. It was not a stranger, but Detective Harris, the man who had investigated the old factory accidents years ago. His face was grim, lined with years of frustration and secrets he couldn't afford to reveal. "You shouldn't be here," Harris said, voice low. "It's not safe. Whoever's running this operation doesn't hesitate to kill." Marlene's heart thumped. "Michael, he's in here. We have to find him." Harris shook his head. "If he's still alive, it's by their rules, not yours. You come in blindly, and you'll never leave." Thomas glanced around the shadowed machinery. "Then we'll follow Michael's trail. We can't let him face this alone." They moved deeper into the factory, the shadows closing in around them. The sound of dripping water became interspersed with whispers, the creak of rusted chains, the squeak of floorboards under unseen weight. Marlene clutched her coat tighter, feeling both fear and determination. Ahead, a flicker of light caught her eye. A small office door, slightly ajar. She saw papers strewn across a desk and a notebook lying open on the floor. Michael's handwriting scrawled across the page. "They're hiding something worse than the accidents. If anything happens to me, the truth must be found." Her stomach churned. Whatever Michael had uncovered, it had terrified him enough to risk his life, and now it might cost him everything. Then a sudden noise, metal scraping across concrete, echoed behind them. They spun to see shadows moving in the corners of the room. Harris raised his hand, signaling silence. The tension became unbearable. Every step forward felt like walking on a knife's edge, every breath a countdown toward disaster. From the shadows, a voice hissed, "Looking for him? You should have stayed home, Mrs. Harper. Some truths are locked away for a reason, and opening them can shatter everything." The voice echoed across the abandoned factory floor, low and menacing. Marlene's breath caught in her throat as Thomas pulled her back behind a rusted support beam. Detective Harris stepped forward, his eyes scanning the shadows. "Show yourself," Harris called, his hand hovering near his gun. From the darkness emerged a man wearing a grimy overcoat, face obscured by a hat pulled low. He paused, studying them as though weighing whether to strike or retreat. "You shouldn't have come," he said finally, his voice chillingly calm. "Your son is deeper in than you know. And every step you take brings him closer to the edge." Marlene's stomach knotted. "Please, tell us where he is." The man tilted his head. "I might help, if you prove you're serious about the truth. There's a ledger. Hidden. It contains everything, names, dates, accounts, the accidents, the payouts, the cover-ups." Thomas's jaw tightened. "Where?" The man smirked. "First, you survived the next hour." Then he melted back into the shadows, leaving only the echo of his footsteps. Harris cursed under his breath. "He's a ghost, and he's right. The ledger is the only thing that can prove what's really happening here." Marlene gripped Thomas's arm. "We have to find it. Michael, he would want us to." Following Harris' instructions, they made their way to the old administrative wing of the factory. Floors groaned beneath their weight, the air thick with dust and the metallic scent of decay. In one office, a filing cabinet sagged under decades of neglect. The top drawer was locked, but Marlene spotted a small key on the floor beneath the desk, likely dropped by Michael. She picked it up, hands trembling. The lock clicked open with surprising ease. Inside, stacked neatly, were ledgers and folders labeled with dates spanning 20 years. "This is it," Harris said, eyes scanning the papers. "Proof of everything. Who got paid, who died, who covered it up. It's all here." Marlene began flipping through the pages, each one a damning testament to the corruption hiding beneath Milltown's industrial surface. Names of workers who died under mysterious circumstances, payments made to silence families, engineers bribed to overlook safety violations. Her chest tightened. Michael was right, it's worse than we imagined. Thomas's voice was low, steady, but filled with rage. "If this gets out, the whole town's in danger. And whoever did this, they'll come after us." A faint creak above them made them freeze. Someone was moving silently along the upper walkway. The shadows shifted. Harris' hand went to his weapon. Suddenly, a metal door slammed somewhere in the distance, followed by the echo of hurried footsteps. Marlene clutched the ledger closer. The factory felt alive, its darkness breathing around them like a predator. From the catwalk above, a shadow dropped, landing just feet from Thomas, its intentions deadly and unmistakable. When the shadows chase you, every choice can be the wrong one. The figure dropped silently in front of Thomas, and the sound of boots scraping against concrete filled the vast emptiness of the factory. Marlene screamed, clutching the ledger, as Detective Harris stepped between them and the shadowy intruder. "You shouldn't be here," Harris barked, weapon raised. The intruder lunged. Harris dodged, swinging his arm to strike, but the man was quick, too quick. In the dim light, Thomas grabbed a nearby pipe, ready to defend his wife. Sparks flew as metal clashed with metal, echoing like thunder in the cavernous space. Marlene stumbled back, heart hammering. "Michael," she shouted, hoping against hope her son had found a way to help them. The shadow spun away, ducking under a beam, then vanished into the maze of machinery and catwalks. Harris cursed. "He's leading us somewhere. Stay sharp. Don't lose him in the darkness." Thomas took a deep breath, his grip tightening on the pipe. "We're not leaving without Michael, or that ledger." They followed the sounds of footsteps and shouts, the factory twisting around them like a labyrinth. Old conveyor belts groaned under the weight of memory, rusted chains rattled above, and the shadows seemed to close in at every corner. Marlene's eyes caught a faint flicker, a light bouncing off the polished metal of a catwalk. "There, he's up there." Harris and Thomas hurried toward the stairwell. They ascended carefully, the steps trembling beneath their weight. At the top, the catwalk stretched across the factory, high above the maze of machines. And there, at the far end, they saw Michael. He was pinned against the railing by a figure dressed in black, face obscured by a mask. The man held a knife, pressing it close to Michael's side. Marlene gasped. No. Harris signaled for Thomas to flank the intruder. On my mark, he whispered. But before they could move, the intruder shoved Michael violently. He stumbled backward, but a quick leap and a grab from Thomas kept him from falling into the abyss below. The intruder spun, eyes flashing with rage. Harris fired a warning shot. The man hissed and darted into a side corridor, disappearing from sight. Michael, shaking but alive, turned toward his mother. Mom, I found something. The ledger isn't the only evidence. They've got boxes hidden, files that go back decades. This factory, it's been killing people, and someone's been covering it up. Marlene clutched him tightly. We'll get it. We'll get it together. Harris shook his head. We need a plan. If we split up now, they'll pick us off one by one. And they know this place better than we do. Thomas nodded grimly. Then we move carefully. We take the evidence, get out, and expose them. But someone has to stay alert. These people, they won't hesitate to kill. The factory seemed to grow darker, heavier, as though aware of their resolve. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every step could be the last. A distant alarm suddenly blared, piercing the night. Metal doors slammed shut around them, trapping them inside with an unseen enemy. Some secrets are buried in walls, and some in hearts. The alarm echoed through the abandoned steel factory, bouncing off the ceilings, rattling machinery, and sending vibrations through the concrete floors. Marlene clutched Michael's hand, her heart racing, as the group realized the doors that had allowed them in now slammed shut with an ominous finality. Thomas pounded on the closest metal door. It's locked, he shouted. We're trapped. Harris surveyed the space with a trained eye. This factory was built to hide more than steel. There are service doors, crawl spaces, hidden rooms. If we move carefully, we might find a way out, or find what they're hiding. Michael tugged on the ledger, flipping frantically through the pages. There's a map. I didn't notice it before. It shows old maintenance tunnels beneath the factory. If we follow it, we can get to the central offices. Marlene nodded, her fears sharpening into determination. Then we move. Every second counts. They descended into a narrow corridor, dimly lit by flickering emergency lights. The walls were coated in years of grime, water dripping from the ceiling in steady plinks. Every sound was amplified, their breathing, the shuffle of their feet, the distant hum of the alarm. At the end of the hall, a faint glow leaked from a small doorway. Michael pushed it open cautiously. Inside, a hidden office, untouched by time, revealed stacks of boxes labeled with dates spanning decades. Marlene's eyes widened. This is it, Michael whispered. These files, they show every accident, every payout, every bribe. This is everything. Thomas knelt, lifting a box carefully. Inside were photographs, signed documents, and journals detailing the deaths of workers that had been dismissed as industrial accidents. Some were deliberate, others negligent, but all concealed with meticulous care. Suddenly, a shadow fell across the doorway. They froze. A voice, cold and authoritative, cut through the room. I was hoping I'd find you here. From the darkness stepped Richard Hale, the factory's owner and the man who had run Milltown's steel operations for over 30 years. His face was a mask of calm, but his eyes were sharp as razors. You shouldn't have come, he said. These papers are dangerous. For you, for your son, for anyone who touches them. Thomas squared his shoulders. We're not leaving without them. People have died. Families have suffered. You're not getting away with it. Hale smirked. Do you think you can stop decades of control with a few papers? I've built this empire carefully, and I will not let a child and his mother undo it. Marlene felt a chill as she glanced at Michael. We have to take them. They deserve to be known. The world deserves the truth. Hale advanced slowly, hands empty but deadly. Every step resonated like a promise of violence. Harris stepped forward, revolver drawn. Stay back, Hale. You're done hiding. Hale paused, a flicker of recognition, or amusement, in his eyes. You think your little rebellion matters? You're trapped. The doors are sealed, the alarms are blaring. By morning, the authorities will think you're the criminals here. Michael's hand clenched around a journal. We'll see about that. The truth doesn't wait for you. Hale's lips curled in a dark smile, the shadows swallowing his figure. You'll learn, sometimes the truth kills faster than the lies. A sudden crash from the ceiling above sent dust and debris raining down. Someone, or something, was coming for them. When darkness surrounds you, courage becomes your only weapon. The ceiling groaned above them as debris fell like hail, dust choking their lungs and stinging their eyes. Marlene screamed, grabbing Michael and pulling him behind a stack of boxes. Harris fired toward the sound, the blast echoing through the cavernous factory. Thomas shouted, "We need to move. Now." The group sprinted down the narrow maintenance corridor Michael had discovered, their feet slipping on the slick concrete. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit were relentless, metallic clangs, the echo of heavy boots, and Hale's unmistakable voice barking orders. "You cannot hide from me," Hale called. "The factory keeps its secrets, and it will not be defiled by the likes of you." Michael clutched the ledger to his chest. "We're not hiding. We're exposing you." They reached a rusted staircase descending into the old underground tunnels. Harris signaled for silence as they crept down into the darkness. Water dripped from the ceiling, and rats scattered at their approach. The air was damp and thick, the stench of oil and decay overwhelming. Marlene's hand shook as she followed her son. "How far down does this go?" she whispered. Harris' flashlight swept over the stone walls. These tunnels were used to transport materials without detection. They connect to every major room in the factory, and to the hidden offices where Hale keeps his most sensitive documents. Thomas muttered, "Then this is our only chance to reach the truth and get out alive." As they navigated the tunnels, the faint sound of running water grew louder. Michael paused, holding up a finger. "Listen, someone's coming behind us." They ducked into a side passage just as a flashlight beam cut across the corridor. Hale's men had entered the tunnels, methodical, armed, and relentless. "Keep moving," Harris whispered. "They can't see everything." The path twisted and turned, the darkness pressing in from all sides. Every echo sounded like an ambush. Every shadow seemed alive. Marlene's heart raced as the thought struck her. If Hale caught them here, no one would survive. Finally, they reached a reinforced steel door. Michael fumbled with the keys he had pilfered from the office earlier. The lock clicked open. Inside, a small room awaited them, lined with shelves, filing cabinets, and crates. The ledger and additional documents revealed the full scale of Hale's corruption. Worker deaths, safety violations, and illegal cover-ups spanning decades. Thomas ran his fingers over the papers. This is enough to bring him down. But the moment was shattered by a sudden metallic crash. Hale's men had found the secondary entrance. Harris drew his weapon. "We hold them off. Get these files to safety." Marlene grabbed Michael's hand, the weight of the truth in their hands almost unbearable. "We have to survive this, for everyone who's been hurt." The shadows surged. Bullets ricocheted. The chase through darkness became a battle of wit, courage, and desperation. Every step forward felt like a gamble between life and death. A loud explosion shook the tunnels, sending the walls trembling. Dust and debris filled the air. Had Hale sealed their escape? Or was it a trap for his pursuers? When the walls close in, only quick thinking can save you. The explosion rattled the tunnels, sending clouds of dust and small rocks into the air. Marlene coughed violently, shielding Michael's face as Thomas and Harris shouted above the roar. The reinforced steel door rattled violently. Hale's men were pounding from the other side. "We have to move, now," Harris yelled, grabbing Michael's hand. They stumbled through the smoke-filled corridor, the air thick and choking. Every step was uncertain, the ground slick from water and debris. Marlene's heart pounded in her chest, fear gnawing at every nerve, but she refused to give in. Michael was alive, the ledger was in their hands, and the truth was within reach. Ahead, the tunnel split into 3 narrow passages. Harris held up a hand, signaling them to stop. "We need the right path. One wrong turn and they'll corner us." Michael opened the ledger, scanning hastily. "The old maintenance map. Here. The left tunnel leads to an emergency exit near the river." Thomas nodded grimly. "Then left it is. Move quickly." They sprinted down the tunnel, the walls closing in, the sound of their pursuers echoing behind them. Hale's men were relentless, their boots pounding like thunder. Harris fired over his shoulder, warning them to keep up, while Marlene clutched the ledger tightly. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a small maintenance chamber. A ladder led up to a grated hatch, just above the rising water. Michael began climbing first, Thomas right behind him. Marlene hesitated, her hands trembled, the weight of exhaustion and terror threatening to overwhelm her. "Mom, up here," Michael called, reaching down. Taking a deep breath, she followed, her fingers gripping the rusted metal tightly. Every rung felt like a lifetime, every second a test of endurance. When she finally emerged onto the wet ground outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the night heavy and silent. They paused, catching their breath, and looked back at the factory. Its windows glowed faintly in the darkness, a reminder that their enemies were still inside, plotting, waiting. Thomas pulled the ledger from her hands, inspecting it. This is the evidence we need. But we have to be smart. Hale will come after us, he won't stop. Michael looked up at the looming silhouette of the factory, determination burning in his eyes. We've survived so far, we can finish this. We have to. Harris nodded. We need to get this to someone outside, law enforcement, journalists, anyone who can make sure Hale pays for everything. But we can't let him know where we're going. Marlene wrapped her arms around Michael. We'll protect each other. No matter what. As they moved into the shadows of the nearby woods, a faint noise made them freeze, the sound of footsteps. Hale himself appeared at the edge of the clearing, his coat flapping in the night wind, eyes burning with fury. Hale smiled, a cruel, knowing smile. Did you really think you could escape me, Harper family? The game isn't over, not by a long shot. Some battles can't be avoided, and some truths demand a reckoning. Hale's figure loomed in the moonlight, every step deliberate, his eyes locked on the Harpers and Harris. The rain had stopped, but the night air was thick with tension, a storm waiting to explode. Step aside, Hale, Harris called, revolver trained steadily. It's over. You're done. Hale laughed, a low, menacing sound that echoed across the clearing. Done? Do you think I built this empire to be undone by a mother and her runaway son? The ledger, you think it can touch me? I am Milltown. Marlene stepped forward, clutching Michael's hand. You're nothing but a murderer hiding behind steel and lies. People have suffered because of you, and it ends tonight. Hale's eyes flashed. You don't understand what you're dealing with. You're weak. You can't win. Thomas tightened his grip on the baseball bat he had picked up in the forest. We'll see about that. We're not weak. We fight for each other, not just for ourselves. Harris signaled for caution. He's dangerous. Stay calm, and we can end this without bloodshed. But Hale had other plans. He reached into his coat, producing a small revolver. I won't let you walk away with my empire, or my secrets. The standoff froze the night. The moonlight glinted off the barrel of the gun. Time seemed suspended, the only sounds their breaths and the soft rustling of leaves. Suddenly, Michael stepped forward, the ledger held high. You're finished, Hale. Every lie, every death, every bribe. This proves it all. The world will know. You won't have control anymore. Hale's face twisted in rage, finger tightening on the trigger. But before he could act, a flash of light illuminated the clearing, police cars, sirens wailing, officers emerging from the woods. Harris had called them during the chaos, coordinating backup without Hale knowing. Hale's eyes widened in shock. Impossible. The officers moved swiftly, surrounding him. Hale tried to fight, but he was outnumbered. His revolver clattered to the ground as two officers tackled him to the wet earth. Marlene exhaled, relief and exhaustion washing over her. Michael dropped the ledger, trembling, but alive. Thomas pulled her into a tight embrace. You did it, Marlene whispered, tears streaming. We survived, we did it together. Harris picked up the ledger, glancing at the family. This evidence will put Hale away for life. He won't escape this time. As Hale was led away in handcuffs, the Harpers stood in the clearing, watching the factory loom behind them. The building that had caused so much pain, fear, and death now seemed just a shadow of its former menace. But the experience had changed them. The fear, the adrenaline, the knowledge of the darkness that humans were capable of, it lingered in their hearts. Michael looked back at the factory one last time, voice low. This isn't over. Someone else will try to take his place. And we have to be ready. Truth brings justice, but it also exposes scars that never fully heal. Days after Hale's arrest, Milltown felt different, quieter, almost tense in its calm. The steel factory still loomed over the town, a silent reminder of decades of corruption and death. Marlene, Thomas, and Michael had returned home, but the events in the factory remained vivid in their minds. The ledger had been handed over to federal authorities. Investigations were underway, and Hale's empire was unraveling. Employees who had lived in fear for decades finally had their voices heard, families were compensated, and safety regulations were enforced. Yet, in their home, the Harpers struggled with the personal cost of the ordeal. Michael sat by the window, staring at the town below, ledger resting on the table beside him. "Mom, Dad, I never realized how deep it went," he said quietly. "The lies, the deaths, it's like the whole town was part of it." Marlene placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing, Michael. You faced the truth. That courage saved lives." Thomas, sitting nearby, shook his head. "I still can't believe we made it out alive. The factory. Hale, it could have ended any of us." Harris, now a trusted friend, visited often. "You've done more than survive," he said. "You've exposed something that will change Milltown forever. But remember, darkness doesn't vanish. People like Hale, they leave marks, and others may follow in his footsteps." Marlene nodded. "We'll be ready. We have to be." In the evenings the family gathered together, repairing the bonds that years of distance and trauma had tested. Marlene watched Michael, realizing he had grown into the courage and responsibility she had hoped for, but at the cost of facing horrors that no child should ever see. One afternoon, as they walked past the now closed gates of the steel factory, Michael paused. "I found a photo in the ledger, a note." Hale mentioned someone else, someone above him, pulling strings. He called them, the silent partners. "They aren't exposed yet." Marlene felt a shiver run down her spine. "Silent partners? So it's not truly over?" Michael shook his head, serious. "Not until they're found. We've survived Hale, but the system that allowed him, that's still out there." Thomas looked at them both. "Then we'll face it together. Whatever comes next, we won't let Milltown fall again." The Harpers had survived the nightmare, but the shadows over Milltown were long. The truth had been revealed, justice partially served, yet the story was far from complete. A black SUV watched the Harpers from across the street, its tinted windows hiding eyes that had been waiting for this moment. Even when the worst has passed, the past never fully lets go. The black SUV lingered across the street, silent and still, but the presence was unmistakable. Marlene's hand instinctively went to Michael's shoulder, sensing the tension in the air. Thomas's jaw tightened. Harris appeared from the side, having spotted the vehicle. "It's too late to run," he said quietly. "They've been following you since Hale went down. Whoever's behind the silent partners, they know everything now." Michael's eyes narrowed, determination hardening his expression. "Then we make sure they know we're not afraid. Hale may be gone, but his network, it can't control us." The SUV's engine purred to life, and it slowly drove off, disappearing into the distance. The Harpers exhaled, a fragile relief washing over them, but the memory of those eyes lingered, watching, calculating, waiting. Weeks passed. The factory was sealed permanently. Investigations continued. Hale's trial became a national spectacle, revealing decades of corruption and negligence. Milltown began to heal, its citizens finally able to speak without fear. The Harpers, however, had changed. Marlene's hair had grown streaks of gray, Thomas's hands bore the calluses of stress and determination, and Michael's once youthful face had taken on the weight of hard-won responsibility. They had survived, but at a cost. One evening, as the family sat on their porch watching the sunset, Marlene spoke quietly. "We faced darkness together, but even if it returns, we have each other, and we have the truth." Michael held the ledger, now safely stored with authorities. "The ledger was just the beginning. I know there are others like Hale, and they're still out there. But now we know how to fight them." Thomas squeezed Marlene's hand. "And we'll fight. No matter what comes next, we face it together." The factory's silhouette faded in the distance as night fell. Shadows lingered, but the Harpers were no longer the same family that had trembled under Hale's tyranny. They had survived, exposed the truth, and reclaimed their town. But Michael couldn't shake the feeling that the silent partners, the unseen architects of Milltown's corruption, were still out there, watching, waiting, plotting. The war might have been won, but the battle for justice never truly ends. Marlene looked at her son and husband. "We've learned something important through all this," she said softly. "Even in the darkest shadows, courage and family can light the way." As they embraced, the night remained calm, yet a faint rumble in the distance hinted that Milltown's shadows were not gone. They were simply lying in wait. And in that quiet, a new determination was born. The Harpers were ready. The ledger, the truth, and the courage of one family had changed the course of Milltown forever. But the legacy of shadows would remain, a reminder that vigilance and bravery are eternal.